Welcome, guys. This is ImageRights. We're sitting down today with Ben Haith, the creator of the Juneteenth flag, one of the most known and renowned Bostonians in America today, with a history of advocacy throughout many fields, as well as creativity that's taken him from working in marketing to creating the Juneteenth flag that has the social impact that it has today. And today we're just going to have a sit down and talk about Mr. Hayes' history, as well as the creation of the Juneteenth flag, what it's meant to him, and protecting that heritage and the legacy of that flag through copyright. So, Ben, glad to have you on today. I think I'm going to start this interview by just asking you simply just to tell us about your journey as a creator, as an advocate, and growing up in Boston, and what eventually led you into designing the Juneteenth flag. You can start wherever you want to start, but yeah, tell us about yourself and your journey, how you got to being the creator of the Juneteenth flag and the protector of its heritage today.
Thank you, Leo, and I'm glad you said I could jump around a little bit. Improvisation. I grew up listening to that word a lot, improvisation, but I'll try to do my best with explaining to you a little bit about my history as it pertains to Juneteenth. Now, when I was growing up in Stamford, Connecticut, with my brothers and sister, our parents were both from the South. My father from North Carolina. My mother was from Virginia. And we would go down south from time to time, almost always during the summer months. So, to make a long story short, we're visiting my mother's sister, who was my Aunt Anna, and we're on my Aunt Anna's farm, and she is talking with my mother. I'm probably in the kitchen. I was very young at the time. So I'm like most children, we listen to what we hear, and when our parents and the older people, they were talking, and I heard the name Juneteenth come up in their conversation. So that perhaps it was underscored because my Aunt Anna's husband, who lived on the farm, his first name was June, spelled like the month of June. So his name reinforced me hearing the name Juneteenth. So I carried that memory with me. It's hard for me to believe I retained that name until I was much older, and I was living in Boston, raised a family, started a new life after I left New York City. I'll just say I was overhearing another conversation as an adult in Boston. And the name Juneteenth, I heard. I said, that name registered. So I did some homework, and I said, this holiday means something. It's significant. And I thought that it would be good to have a symbol for it. So I looked to see if there was one, and there wasn't. So I started working on it. And it took some time. I did some drafts. I talked to a number of artists in Boston, but nothing final. We were raising a flag, but it didn't resemble the final flag. I was watching PBS, and they have had a show, and I know it's still on. It's called Nova.
Okay.
And while I was watching it and listening to it, I thought about what Nova meant. I looked that up, and it's a new star. I thought about, wow, that's what we need. And if we're going to do a flag, particularly the 50 stars that we already have, and the one star from the Lone Star State of Texas, my mind started moving around and looking at things, and I thought about the horizon and the star rising into the heavens, a new beginning. And it all came together with time. To me, when I tell this story, it's still like, how did this all happen? Then I'm working downtown in Boston near City Hall and working as a case manager for homeless veterans. I get a phone call. I think it was there where I was working. It's from an artist, a graphic artist who lives in Boston. She said she heard about me wanting to create a design for flags, and she wanted to know, could she talk with me about it? So we ended up meeting in downtown Boston, not far from where I was working. And she said, I'd like to try to capture what it is you're trying to put into the flag. And it didn't take her long. Her name is Lisa Jeanne Graf. She still lives in Boston. We stay in touch. And she didn't take long, I don't know, maybe a week or so. And we met again downtown at one of the fast foods places. And I was like taken back. She did a wonderful job in putting together what I thought would be a good design. She's a professional. And that's the story up until that point.
Yeah. I think it's interesting to me because you mentioned you started to build these symbols around what you thought would be significant or mean something for the flag. And then you're able to take these thoughts and bring them to an artist like Lisa when she eventually popped up out of nowhere. And she was able to take those ideas and turn that into the flag we have today. I guess one of the questions I kind of piggybacks on this question is what enlightened you to the power of symbols or the power of having something like an IP or something so creative, visual for people to gather around, especially now that it's really the flag for Juneteenth nationally and internationally. What was the inkling? What motivated you to want to create this piece of, I guess you could say it's a little bit marketing, but it's also just very entrenched in the culture itself, especially with the symbols and what they mean. So what got you into using symbols and using this flag now to even bring this holiday into a higher elevated plane consciously for people?
Leo, I'm glad you asked that question because this is an important one to me, because when I reflect on what has transpired with my experience with Juneteenth and the Juneteenth flag, I can only attribute it to a spirituality of our creator. People refer to as God, something much larger than myself, because it just seemed to happen. When I took one step, it seemed something else was given to me to continue. Just like working with Dr. Myers, he called me. I never heard of Dr. Myers doing the advocacy to make Juneteenth a national holiday. He called me, wanted to know, could his organization have use of the flag? He's doing all that work. So, of course, I said, you can. And he and his wife, Sylvia, he has passed away, but his wife, I'm still in touch with her. We work together at the organization that Dr. Myers started. And it just seemed, as I look back on it, it was something much more sometimes than I contributed to or attributed to a spiritual aspect in our existence.
Yeah, it's interesting. It sounds like there's actually many pieces and people and players at play.
Yes.
Right? And you contributed this key portion as well, but as part of this great community of like-minded individuals that came together on this cause. Is that how you guys put it together? Each person had a little piece that they added
Yes,
to it?
that's right. And I guess I learned how important that is from my being an activist, an advocate, how things are done too quickly. You have to wait and see sometimes to see what transpires, different stages, development. And you made me think of my mother when I showed her the flag. at Stanford. I'll never forget the smile that was on her face. I didn't even have, I just said, this is a Juneteenth flag. And it was just like, whoa.
Yeah. Yeah, I could definitely see, especially for the older generations, how that could even have a more visceral reaction of seeing
Yeah.
something tangible like that
And then
exist.
learning more about Juneteenth, the history, I found out more about certain parts of the country, acknowledging Juneteenth, mostly people in the South, people of color, certainly Texas, where it all began in 1865. And I even found out online YouTube that maybe why my mother and her sister were aware of Juneteenth in Virginia was because they were celebrating Juneteenth in Virginia back in the early 1920s. And so she and her family, relatives, and people in Virginia, they were celebrating Juneteenth in different parts of the South.
Wow. It sounds like you got really in touch with the history of it.
Yeah, I felt that was important.
And I think what's interesting for me looking at it all now, it's like you had the history and you did the research and you were having these conversations with people about the past of the celebration. But from there, you also had the vision to know that this is something that's going to be important in the future. And there's something to be said about ownership, especially cultural ownership. A lot of times people in communities of color, marginalized communities create these great things, but then they don't receive any of the compensation for bringing these cultural things into the forum. And one thing that's really special, I think, about your story is that you had the vision even back then to copyright the flag with the US Copyright Office. Now, this was back in the 90s. And I want to ask you, at the time you were just creating a flag, it didn't really necessarily have any value and it wasn't necessarily seen by a lot of people yet. But what gave you the vision to copyright it back then?
It goes back again to my work experience in New York City, working with an advertising and marketing agency. I learned a lot, just like most people do on their jobs. And I guess I retained it after I left New York and moved to Boston. I still was interested in how companies and products are developed. I was successful. I wrote something, a proposal, and submitted it to one of our neighborhood organizations. To my surprise, Leo, it turned out my proposal was put in the newspaper or newsletter, whatever it was. And I said, look at this. This is the proposal I wrote, and they published it. They put it in their newsletter. And the next thing, Leo, is somebody in Boston took the proposal and implemented it.
Wow.
And to make a long story short, a wonderful woman from Philadelphia, Georgia Watson, she created a program as a result of it with the same name and everything. So this was the first success I had. I didn't think anybody would take it that far. And the next thing you know, my friend Georgia, her program gone national. Oh my goodness. The first President Bush wanted to know Georgette because of this program. That kind of planted some seeds in my mind. Say, maybe I can do this more frequently.
So it's interesting. So it started really like the madman era of New York City
Yeah.
marketing that inspired you. And then you went off and did some freelance and the things you worked on actually started to take weight within the community you were addressing. That's interesting.
Yeah. But them putting that in the neighborhood newsletter, I had no control of that. I didn't ask them to do that.
Yeah. Was that the first time, I guess, you realized that work that you had published was being used maybe without your permission, or that the things that you put into the world have value and now other people can use those? And is that kind of what inched you to wanting to protect the flag once you had it created?
When I look back on it, your questions are very valuable in marketing and advertising. yeah, it started me to think about maybe better start protecting anything that I create or develop. That started it, yes. I did that with the Juneteenth flag. I said, I have to, and I hired an attorney from Cambridge, Massachusetts. Got to get Cambridge a plug. And he worked with me on it and protected and some other intellectual properties.
Okay, so you actually went to a lawyer to do. You didn't operate these on your own. You went and sought professional help to get them.
Yeah, I did. But with the flag particularly,
Nice.
because I saw how the response to it, I said, this could become significant. I didn't know how significant. I'll be quite honest with you. I like being honest because I don't have to worry about what I'm saying.
Yeah.
When I had my relationship with Dr. Ronald Myers, we talked often on the phone about what he was doing and what I was doing. He was really a phenomenal man. He had many talents besides being a medical doctor and a minister. He was just doing all that work all over the country to get Juneteenth made into a holiday. This lawyer, he helped me with protection of the flag and some other intellectual properties. This experience, as many experiences are with people, it's educational. You learn, wait, I wish I'd known that. I didn't know that. There's more for me to learn. And I'm still in the process of learning. I'm learning from ImageRights. And so the learning process goes on, and I've come to realize that after I had a workforce or somewhere along the lines, the old thing is you learn something every day. I like slogan. I get into slogans sometime. I'm a slogan maker.
Yeah.
And I said one day to someone in the Veterans Center here in Norwich, I said, I believe life is a learning curve. That's another way of you learn something every day, or maybe we really don't stop learning.
Yeah. Oh, I completely agree with you, especially even in dealing with the Juneteenth flag. I think ImageRights has also had a learning curve because this is one of our first instances of going after these quote unquote Schedule A cases where we go after vendors on Amazon, Walmart, Temu, AliExpress
Oh, yeah.
platforms that historically we haven't been able to go after. But I think the Juneteenth flag in your case example has given us a great platform to start going after and seeing how can we protect photographers and creators like yourself against infringers that are international and have been able to hide behind these platforms. Yeah, the learning curve is real, but we've had some success. Just today, I just found out one of your recent claims just got settled. So yeah, we're moving forward in that direction.
Leo, I was aware back in the day with trying to create the flag, but I was paid close attention to. Well, I was familiar with the word infringement. So as time has gone on, I learned more about it. I can understand some of the reasons why some of them wanted to use the design of the Juneteenth flag on their product without consent. But at the same time, it is an error because I was preparing for this interview. I believe that the subject of infringement and protection of intellectual rights should be courses that are offered in education in schools for young people to understand that if they create something, they shouldn't have be worried about someone marginalizing it or taking advantage of it anyway. I think this is something I'm going to continue to propose as a result of working with companies like yours.
Yeah, there should definitely be ramifications involved. I think one of the questions that really speaks to you is how did it feel for you seeing your work, especially the flag being printed on products or displayed without your consent, especially those commercial uses where the vendors had nothing to do with the culture, the community. How did that make you feel the first time you saw the Juneteenth flag being commercially used without your permission or knowledge?
It's something about the way you asked that question, Leo, that made me think about the history of the people of color in this country And maybe what they did to help make this country what it is wouldn't be described as infringement, but this country used many of our ancestors to gain profit, benefit. They didn't receive what they should have been given. In the early stages, they weren't even allowed, they weren't considered to be free or even citizens of this country. So I can say our people have come a long way, and this country is still grappling with the truth on the history of this country. So you hear the term marginalization, but this country espouses to be fair.
Mm.
And that's what I believe we're discussing now, uh, the freedom and not to be taken advantage of in any way based upon your race, your sex, your religion, or anything like that. This
Mhm.
country is still in a working process. And I think what your company is doing, Image Rights, is going to help make things better for people in this country going forward.
Yeah. Oh man. Thank you. And actually that leads me to my next question. Because you've partnered with Image Rights and also with copyright attorney Rick Voitis. Big shout out to Rick Voitis. To address these infringements, how has having this kind of support system around you made a difference for you so far?
Well, when you say support systems, it makes me think of my son Elijah and my nephew Scott. They have
Thank
been so valuable. I realized once they started working to help me, the importance of a team. Even though there was three of us, they have been doing phenomenal work. I'm so thankful that I have relatives like those two and the support.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess that kind of leads me to before you guys had attorneys and you were using image rights, how are you going about going after the unauthorized uses of the flag? Were you finding difficulty doing it on your own? Is that why you reached out to Rick Foitis and then image rights, or what was
Well,
that process like for
well,
you?
well, see, that question is connected to the answer I just gave.
Okay.
My son and his cousins, they have been so valuable. They actually came to my aid because I may have stretched myself out, spread myself out too far, creating other intellectual properties and just trying to get on with life. They came together and they have just, they're phenomenal on what they've helped me with and what they're working on. They helped create a LLC. I, I'm just thankful. And again, I believe it's spiritual. God is looking out for not only our family, but the larger family
Yeah.
of humanity. And I've learned a lot more about humanity since being involved with Juneteenth as well. To me, it used to be maybe just a word. No, the humanity is the human family.
Is that why you think this is the protection of the Juneteenth flag, the IP of it? Is that why you think it's so important? Because it's not just you protecting yourself and this beautiful thing you've created, but also you're doing that for all humanity, that we can protect our ideas and other people can look at your story and do the same.
Yes,
I guess my question is, why do you feel it's important to take action and stop infringement, not just for yourself, but for other creators?
because I think I've become somewhat of a wordsmith. I'm not top notch, but I know words are important. I learned that words are tools. They can be interpreted different ways, applied in different ways.
So why do you think it's important for us to actually take action and stop these infringements?
Because it, once again, is part of our country's history. We are a unique country. I don't know of any country, I haven't heard of any country like ours. We espouse to help humanity, freedom, opportunity. Yet at the same time, we have a history where people have been hurt, damaged.
Mm.
We have things that we need to address. I believe that's what this country is going through now. And the protection of people's intellectual properties, their work, their creativity is a part of that history. I think the Juneteenth flag can demonstrate that and people can learn from it. I'm learning by just answering your question
Yeah.
on what I can talk about when I go out to Juneteenth events and gatherings.
What advice would you share? What advice, looking back on it now, or maybe from the beginning to now, or just looking at your whole process of not only the Juneteenth flag, but working in other advocacy circles? I know now you're doing work with the elderly and you're involved in other avenues as well. And through all of this life experience working in advocacy and creating these symbols, creating these IPs, what pieces of advice would you share with other creatives and other advocates that will have a similar journey than you or strive to have a similar impact as you have had?
I believe I'm somewhat of an optimist. And
Yeah.
I like to think like people like you all are going to help people understand that whatever you're doing in life, whatever your occupation might be, if you have an opportunity to help others, look, find out what it is you can do. Maybe you can't do it right away. Maybe you'll plan on it in the future. It's just like now, I had learned something about seniors when I worked in Boston, and I think that I want to help seniors, particularly at senior centers, because I've learned more over a period of time about senior centers. That sort of thing. People can use the expertise, the experience to help people in their neighborhoods, their communities, their neighbors, or even people nationally or worldwide. Our world is changing. I, along with many people, I sense that the world is becoming a community, a world community, something that's been talked about for a long time. And I think the countries are coming together. They want to work together, or what I call Mother Earth, climate change, opportunities, poverty, stop these crazy wars. So whatever people are doing in their life, they should think about, if they get an opportunity, try to help others.
That's a great message. How do you see the Juneteenth flag fitting into this future? What is the legacy, the 100-year legacy of the Juneteenth flag for you?
That question makes me think of what I said about I like to create slogans.
Yeah.
Well, maybe the slogan isn't the right term to use in the case of the Juneteenth flag, but I like to say, if anyone wants to know what Juneteenth means, I thought about it. I said, Juneteenth is, some people have said it's America's second Independence Day. You hear different things. I said, let me see if I can simplify it. And I say Juneteenth means freedom. And then people might say, look at what freedom is more closely.
Wow. So it's this evolving conversation that continues through different eras because
Yeah, it's
that's
a
a
learning
part of it.
process for me. I'm on the curve, the way you hear news. And like I said, the world seems to be a lot, I don't want to use the word smaller. Yeah, I go with my wordsmith again. Closer. And the United Nations has been around for a while. And maybe there's some things they can do to make things better for people and humanity. One of the things I thought about, I got to do the research. Research is always important. when you think about something. See, now that we have the internet, we can find out things
Yeah.
that people have been doing, and you don't have to work as hard. So perhaps someone look more at what the United Nations is doing on a local level.
Yeah. Love that. And I agree with you. I think institutions and a lot of the things that we've already put together as collective humans in
Mhm.
place, they can be doing a lot of things to be affecting our lives. I like this idea of coming together and helping each other. I think something that plays also to your case is the creation of meaningful moments. The Juneteenth holiday today is a time where people get together, celebrate, share laughs and smiles. Last year, I was in Denver, Colorado, where it was celebrated, and it's one of the biggest in the nation. To see, some of these businesses that don't get so much business during the year filled with people, to see the streets filled with people sharing time together, regardless of their political beliefs, regardless
Mhm.
of everything else. They're just coming together to celebrate this ideal of America,
Yeah.
which is freedom and liberty and togetherness and everyone being able to have the same opportunities, just the camaraderie of people within the Black community and people being able to also enjoy that holiday from outside the community, which leads me to my question. And I think Juneteenth has done probably more in the United States than the United Nations, but that's just me. Just culturally, I'm saying that Juneteenth had a great impact. So, what has been one of the most meaningful moments for you personally since creating the flag? And you can answer that however you want to. That could be an overarching moment, or it could be a specific moment that happened to you.
I want to just address what you said about what Juneteenth has done to bring people together. That's so important. I'm glad you said that. And it will continue to do that because this country has some healing to do. Many people talk about we need to heal. They've been saying that for a long time. And this country still has to heal. A word that may apply is it's hard for some people to accept the truth. And we're learning that about our country. At least I see it now, is that some people don't want to deal with it. And with truth, we can maybe improve our country. Now, as far as you said something about meaningful moments,
Yes. What are some of the most meaningful moments you've had through Juneteenth and post
uh,
the creation of the flag?
I mentioned one already was seeing my mother's smile.
Yeah.
Did something that's good. My mother approves of it.
Yeah. Because it was a genuine moment that you were able to capture it.
And another one I thought of while you were talking was when there was a mayor in Boston named Thomas Menino. He's passed away now, but when the flag was at the final design and I was able to donate the flag, he had the flag raised in front of City Hall, Boston City Hall. I remember looking at it and I said, I want to see how this flag looks from the distance. And I looked, analyzed it, and I said, this is something. But the most important part was took it upon herself to have it raised for Juneteenth.
Yeah.
Then everything just seemed to continue from that moment on. I said, this is larger than the flag. The flag is important, but it's a symbol. That's what's the reason why I wanted to design it, have one design in the first place. I thought it needed a symbol, just like this country has a symbol. All countries have symbols.
You create a symbol that's now being used internationally. I
Mhm.
think it's one of the things that's been created within the last 20, 30 years that's really taken off, and people have really taken to it as a symbol of pride, unity, humanity, freedom. It stands for so many good things. A lot of times, some of these logos and symbols that we
Yeah.
see, they don't represent good things. And this is one of those things that truly does represent humanity. For my closing question, I wanted to ask you, how are you going to personally be celebrating Juneteenth this year?
We've been invited to come to Boston again. I'm going to Boston. I turned down some in the past, some other invitations on Juneteenth, but Boston comes first. So
Yeah.
much happened in my life in Boston. I can't ignore it. Even though when I moved there, it was troublesome.
Mm.
Things changed. And that's what you want to do. And what President Obama was about. He was a teacher. And at the same time, Leo, I'm gaining so much from being with you in this interview because you're a young man and you represent young people. And so I feel really positive.
Yeah, definitely. You're an inspiration, and the work, like you said, is a symbol that's going to live on forever and continue to build on its own legacy.
And you're helping it. You're helping it.
Yeah, no, thank you. We are completely grateful to you for taking the time to sit down with us today. This is
I,
a great
pre-
interview.
I appreciate it, Leo.